My friends, I'd like to explore with you how we can use unusual language, creative words, and imaginative ways to build deeper and more meaningful and lifetime relationships with our clients and lead to larger sales. You see, through the simple power of words, we have the ability to change the reaction that we get from our clients, which can lead to a different response from those clients and hopefully lead to the results that we desire, just by changing some words. Allow me to share an example with you. Let's say that we were meeting at a party and you asked me a question because you didn't know me, and you said to me, "So what do you do?" And I replied to you, because this was my job, that I'm a garbage collector. I can imagine some of you will say, "Oh really, is that the time? I have an urgent appointment at the washroom." Has something similar ever happened when you answer that question by saying, "I'm a life insurance agent"? What if I answered my question in a slightly different way, and when you asked me, "What do you do?" I replied to you that I am a facilitating executive in the waste management profession. It's the same job, but just by using different words, I hopefully create a different reaction and a different response, which may lead to the result that I'm after. So how could we use this principle of changing words to change what it is that we do in our business that could influence behavior? In my travels around the world, when I'm meeting financial advisors, I find that many of them, when they're making their first appointment, will say to their client that the first appointment is free. Or worse than that, they'll say nothing about the value or cost of a first meeting. My friends, if something is free, what value does it have? Nothing. So what happens when we say to our prospect that the first meeting is free, is what we're really saying is, I don't have any value. I have no self-worth. It doesn't even matter if you don't show up. What if we changed one of those words so that instead of saying that the first meeting is free, we changed it to, the first meeting is at my expense? Because it is, isn't it? And just by changing a couple of words there, we can hopefully change the reaction, the response, and the result that we get. Because what I'm saying when I say that the first meeting is at my expense, I'm really saying to you is that I have a value, I have some self-belief in my own confidence and self-worth, but I'm willing to share it with you. And by saying that the first meeting is at my expense, I'm taking advantage of a principle called the power of reciprocity. The power of reciprocity says that if I do something for you, you will feel obliged to do something for me. If I invite you to my house for dinner, and you're all welcome at some stage, you may feel obliged that you should invite me back to yours. So if I give you the first meeting at my expense, the implication, the subliminal message is that the next meeting is somehow at your expense. That you might therefore do some business with me. When we understand the psychology of how we can use words to influence behavior, then we can use that as a powerful device. But in order to do so, we need to understand how people buy. The buying process for our clients is that they buy with emotion and then justify with logic. Allow me to explain with an example of what that means. Have you ever gone out to buy a new suit or a new outfit, and when you go to the store, you go with a budget of, let's say, make up a number, $200 in mind. But when you go to the store, how many people, raise your hands, go looking around the store at other items that aren't $200? Anybody? Yeah, everybody. It's human nature, that's what we all do. And when we go around and we do that, and we find an outfit that may be $300 or $400 or maybe even $500 or $600, but we really, really like it, what happens to the budget? It disappears. Has anyone ever done that? Yeah, everybody. It's human nature to do it. My friends, I did that with a car. I went to buy a particular car, and when I was there, I saw another one next to it that had lots of features that I really liked, and it was 50% more than I was willing to pay. But I really, really liked it. And I bought it. Now let me give you some context to that. I don't drive. I do 2,000 miles a year in my car because I get a train into London from my home. My car just sits in the garage for most of the year. But what it really is saying is that if we get the emotion right, if we use the right words to create the right emotions, powerful responses can take place. Perhaps let me explain how we might use that in our business. Perhaps when we meet a client and we quoted him a premium for doing a job, taking out some life assurance, and we know that he can afford it. That's key. We know that he can afford it, but he says to you, I can't afford it. What he's really saying to you is, I don't have enough emotional attachment in this sale. Because if he had enough emotional attachment, the money will always be there. And so we need to think of words that we can use that can influence the emotional responses. How many people here, when you're writing some life insurance, across the course of your career, have had a loaded or rated case? What that means is where the premium that's come back on the acceptance is greater than the amount you quoted. Has anybody ever had one of those? If you didn't raise your hands, you're not writing enough life insurance. If you write enough life insurance, you will always get a loaded or rated case. My friends, in my 20 years in business, I have never had a loaded or rated case. You see, if I go out and see my client and I quote him a premium of, say, $100 a month, but the acceptance comes back after the medical and the underwriter wants, say, $150 a month, I go back to my client and I say, John, I have some really good news for you. You've been accepted on normal terms for someone in your condition. Because that's what it is, isn't it? A loaded or a rated premium. Sorry, just going back on the slides. A loaded or rated premium is actually the normal premium for somebody with medical conditions. But when I meet advisors around the world, they go to their client and say, John, I'm really sorry. I tried my best, but the underwriter has increased the premium by 50%. Is that okay? And John says, get out of here. How can we ever expect a positive result if we go out using negative language? We have to use positive language in order to create a positive result. Sometimes we may meet clients who are, dare I say it, a little overweight, perhaps fat. I would never say anything like that to a client. I would change the words. And when I meet a client who is perhaps someone in the photograph, I'm very polite. And I would say to the client, to manage his expectation, Mr. Client, when you go for the medical, we may find that you are under height. And he says, what do you mean? And I said, well, on the graph that's got the height and weight ratios, I reckon you should be 8 foot tall. Now, this is not a cue for you to look at your neighbor and work out how tall they are. How do we use unusual words to create value in what we do? So I say to my clients when I'm meeting for the first time, I say to them that we have 3 components to our service. Our service can be cheap, it can be fast, and it can be good. But you can only have 2 out of the 3. You see, if you want it cheap and fast, you can't expect it to be good. And if you want it cheap and good, you can't expect it to be fast. And if you want it fast and good, please don't expect it to be cheap. And that's how I position my clients, that don't negotiate on my price, because price is non-negotiable, the other things are. Positioning ourselves with unusual language leads to greater relationships. Now, in our course of our careers, we'll come across a client who you know should be buying some life assurance, but it point blank refuses to do so. Ever had any of those? You know that he should, but he just will not look after his family. You've tried every sales idea, every concept, every strategy, but he refuses to buy. So this is what I now do. I go back to my office and I get an envelope, and on the back of the envelope I write a message to his wife. And I say the contents of this envelope are very important and they relate to your husband's life insurance. Please call me upon receipt. And I put my name and phone number. I then seal the envelope and I mail it to the wife. A couple of days later, she'll call me and she says, "Bhupinder, you sent me this envelope about my husband's life insurance, but there's nothing in it." And I say to her, "Yes, I know, because when your husband dies, I'll be sending you another one. And I just wanted you to get used to it." Now, this is not the very first sales idea that you would use, it's the very last. It's when everything else has failed. Now, guaranteed, when he gets home that night, there will be a big argument. Further guaranteed is that he will buy the life insurance. He just isn't going to buy it from me. But that's okay, because I can rest assured that I've made a sale for a fellow agent somewhere. I want to share an idea with you that I use on an almost daily basis. When Leonardo da Vinci painted the Mona Lisa, at the time that he painted it, all he had was the blank canvas and the oil paint that he put on that. And once he'd created the Mona Lisa, that's all it really was a piece of canvas with a splash of oil paint. So what is it that made the Mona Lisa into a work of art? It was time. It was time that made that simple portrait into the most valuable work of art masterpiece that one can imagine. My friends, isn't that very much like what we do? Because we get, as Brian said earlier on today, we get a piece of paper with a promise to pay enshrined in a drop of ink. And at the time we hand it to our clients, there's very little value. It is just the paper and the ink. But what creates a work of art is time. Because we know that at one point in the future, that piece of paper with a drop of ink will turn into a financial masterpiece. So perhaps we can say to our clients that we're financial artists. And what we do is create works of art that will be financial masterpieces that will last generations to come. So next time you're having a client appointment, I want you to think really, really carefully about the words that you use and how, through a careful analysis of those words, how you could change them to change the emotional response and behavior that you get from your clients. Because what we've established is that through the simple power of words, we have the ability to create a different reaction. We have the ability to deliver a different response in order to give you the results you deserve. Thank you very much.